I can tell you that to people who follow the Adani group, there is nothing surprising or astonishing at all about the revelations. This is about bribery, which, having worked with a couple of American institutions like Bank of America and Alliance Capital, I can tell you they take it seriously. Their institutions, fortunately, I would say, is not as fragile as ours. And I think Mr. Adani will find it very, very difficult to get out of this entire imbroglio, because from here on, I see the problem only getting from bad to worse for him. Can you imagine that the Supreme Court appointed a committee that frankly was as good as comatose? The SEBI, the most fraudulent, duplicitous, shameless organization on the face of this earth. And also the fact that at the end of the day, and that's what comes out in the report, that Mr. Adani's group was willing to pay bribes and in turn inflate the prices of electricity and energy and recover the bribes and make more profits. I mean, to me, this should cause a public revolt across the country. The man's market capitalization goes up from 4 billion in 2014 when Mr. Modi became Prime Minister to 10 billion in 2020, 76 billion in 21, and 152 in 22. Mr. Adani's wealth at one point of time, 85% of them came in 3 years between 2022 to 2022. Don't waste your time on what the BJP says. They will try and deflect it. They have been batting for him in any case, because remember, Neelu, in protecting Adani, they're basically trying to protect Narendra Modi, India's Prime Minister. Mr. Modi and Mr. Adani are so deep down in this cesspool of murky politics that I think they're going to find it hard to extricate themselves. But if any of his deals has got an element of opacity or kickbacks or a gravy train, then Mr. Adani will have to face the legal consequences.
Hello and a warm welcome to HW News Network, your one-stop show, truth be told, for some engaging and thought-provoking conversations. It's trouble big time for business tycoon Gautam Adani, because a US court, that is the US Department of Justice and Securities Commission, has indicted Gautam Adani and 7 others, including his nephew, Sagar Adani, and 3 other executives on charges of fraud and bribery. Now, the case pertains to a deal between Adani Green Energy Limited and a US firm to sell 12 gigawatts of solar energy to various states like Tamil Nadu, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, and so on. Now, it's a case which deals with a bribe case of 2,000 crore, where the money has exchanged between Adani Green Energy and that US firm and several Indian officers, the state officials of the states I named. Now, Adani has come out with a statement saying that all these allegations are baseless. They will go for a legal recourse. Rahul Gandhi had held a press conference in the afternoon, and he said that Adani must face arrest. Now, what is going to be the repercussion of this big development which has shaken the entire corporate world? As far as the corporate governance is concerned, serious questions are being raised, and US Securities Commission has done what the Indian courts, what SEBI just could not do. Now, is Prime Minister Modi's position getting absolutely untenable? Joining me now this evening is author, political analyst, and former Congress spokesperson Sanjay Jha. And Sanjay Jha is closely glued to this story right from the morning. He's been with me on various platforms for discussions, and it will be very insightful to hear him on this particular issue. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for joining on HW News. And your first thoughts to this big development, which has really shaken the entire corporate world. What do you think is going to be the immediate repercussion of this US indictment of Gautam Adani?
Firstly, Neelu, I think when the Hindenburg report called Adani Group as the biggest con in corporate history. The Adani Group stood and gave a big lecture on Indian nationalism, an attack on the Indian, formidable economic story of the future with a very nationalist tinge. And of course, the BJP, I have always believed, has been the ultimate public relations and legal counsel for the Adani Group. This time, it'll be hard to escape because this is coming from the market regulator in the United States. And it's pretty obvious that the SEC would not be encouraging an arrest warrant out for people like Mr. Adani because, he is considered to be amongst the richest people in the world politically and connected and a very powerful business figure. They have done their homework. I can tell you that to people who follow the Adani Group, there is nothing surprising or astonishing at all about the revelations. It is expected, the whole bravado, the braggadocio that, we will take it up, we'll take a legal recourse. But I think at this moment, the government of Mr. Modi, frankly, the Prime Minister himself should speak because the allegations have been about Mr. Adani's proximity with the Prime Minister, right? That's been the seminal charge. And what we find here is that the allegations are extremely severe. And remember, this is not just about accounting fraud or stock price manipulation that Hindenburg had talked about. This is about bribery, which, having worked with a couple of American institutions like Bank of America and Alliance Capital, I can tell you they take it seriously. Their institutions, fortunately, I would say, is not as fragile as ours. Look at SEBI. I'm surprised how Madhvi Puri Butch has not resigned today out of pure self-respect. I mean, there's got to be some iota of your own personal integrity. But that is the story as we talk. This is going to have repercussions. And I think Mr. Adani will find it very, very difficult to get out of this entire imbroglio, because from here on, I see the problem only getting from bad to worse for him.
No, but do you think that Adani could still explore an exit door for himself, given the fact that Trump will assume presidency in January and given the proximity of Trump with Prime Minister Narendra Modi? Do you think that Adani somehow will be able to work up his way?
Well, if Mr. Donald Trump wants to damage his own credibility at the very start of his presidency, good luck to him. The fact remains that, as I said to you, Neelu, the US courts, for example, we can criticize many of the judgments. One can, take the FBI to task. Every institution does have some degree of, pressures from various quarters, but they are independent in America to a large extent. Can you imagine the former president had to face the courts? He was indicted. Do you think that could ever happen in our country? The answer is no, right? I mean, look at Madhvi Puri Butch. Look at Indian big media. I mean, they backed for Mr. Modi and the powerful businessmen when their job is to question the powerful. So,
Absolutely.
These are ironies of our time. Why are you and I debating this so vigorously on your program, Neelu? Because we know that the big TV channels are going to try and black this out. Or at the most, they will, briefly talk about it today. So I think Mr. Adani has a lot to explain. The tragedy, Neelu, is this, that can you imagine that the Supreme Court appointed a committee that frankly was as good as comatose? The SEBI, the most fraudulent, duplicitous, shameless organization on the face of this earth. Mr. Modi's government, well, the lesser talked about it, the better. Shameless to the core, brazening it out, basically even denying Rahul Gandhi his MP's seat. They actually kind of went after him with, saying that he needs to be criminally defamed and deprived of his Lok Sabha seat. You know what happened to Mahua Moitra? This is a whole conspiracy. And why would Mr. Modi's government put its neck on the line for Mr. Gautam Adani? That's a question that the people of India need to find the answer to, because it is obviously related to political funding. That will have to be investigated. I was actually very astonished that when the electoral bond scam came out, Neelu, you found Mr. Adani was conspicuous by his absence, right? So you're keen to know, how did Mr. Adani return the favors for all the multiple airport contracts? the way the government has looked away from many of the shenanigans his group has committed. The SEBI literally sleepwalking around, and it's all happening in broad daylight. So I think there is a can of worms, a Pandora's box, which I think is now inevitably going to surface. And the allegations are extremely serious. Remember, the US is very sensitive about misleading of investors. So the charges here are that you misled investors, you raised monies. By the way, they also lied to the Indian Stock Exchange by saying that there were no such, investigations on asking them questions on the, tip-offs of payments made, and also the fact that at the end of the day, and that's what comes out in the report, that Mr. Adani's group was willing to pay bribes and in turn inflate the prices of electricity and energy and recover the bribes and make more profits. I mean, to
No,
me, this
right.
should cause a public revolt across the country.
Absolutely.
Because
No, but look
we've
at,
been
look
taken
at what. But look at Amit Malviya. Look at what the Godi media is saying, that even Gautam Adani paid bribes to the Congress governments. They have the gall to say this, that they are trying to brush away the entire matter by saying that since Rahul Gandhi held a press conference, so now they are saying that he paid bribes to the Congress governments as well, and the Congress also needs to answer on this. Now, what would you say to a reaction like this?
Neelu, let me tell you, the BJP IT cell is like Joseph Goebbels during the Nazi regime. They are masters at disinformation, misinformation, fake news. This is their whole uh, foundational strength. This is how they have fooled India for all these years. This guy, I mean, the person's name that you took, you see the allegations against him where he's blatantly spread vicious news to polarize communities and damage people's reputation. Let me answer the question. He forgot to tell you that the BJD and the Andhra government are not Congress governments. They are opposition governments who were your alliance. They were your alliance in the parliament. They voted for you in parliament. They stood by you on they supported you on the no confidence mission or no confidence motion, which is anyway mission, by the way. So the truth, Neelu, is this, that Mr. Modi's government has to answer as to who were the people in the bureaucracy or in the politics of these states who was involved. Now they're talking about states like Chhattisgarh, because Chhattisgarh at that time was under the Congress government. Why is Mr. Malviya not telling the people that that report also mentions the Jammu and Kashmir government, which was under President's rule, reporting to Delhi under Mr. Modi's nose? Can Mr. Malviya and the BJP answer that question? There is another. Let me tell you another. The larger issue is that Rajasthan and Maharashtra, and you should see the reporters' collective investigation, Rajasthan and Maharashtra, both under the BJP, very recently came out with the same solar tender power contracts. Extremely similar, making conditions very easy for Mr. Adani to get those contracts. Mr. Adani's group actually got the Rajasthan contract, and it is this expose that made the Rajasthan government do a sudden, backtracking on its original call. As far as Maharashtra is concerned, we all know what's going on with the Dharavi development project. And to the best of my knowledge, the Adani group remains a front runner here as well. What does it tell you? That it's not about who all got the bribe. I mean, obviously, Mr. Modi's government should have known it before the SEC told you. Let me ask this question of the entire BJP. Did you need the SEC or the Department of Justice in America to tell you that Adani's group was actually making, kickbacks or cutting deals to get the power contracts? Why weren't these investigated earlier by India's investigating agencies? Because Mr. Adani has got a carte blanche. He's just like literally running his own empire here in India. Everybody who's followed the group's growth will look at two data points to tell you how Mr. Modi's government has allowed these to happen. The man's market capitalization goes up from 4 billion in 2014, when Mr. Modi became prime minister, to 10 billion in 2020. 76 billion in 21, and 152 in 22. Mr. Adani's wealth at one point of time, 85% of them came in 3 years between 2022 to 2022. And the SEBI was like, everything is okay. Well, it's not okay. And let me tell you, Neelu, the other point. In 2022, India's market capitalization in terms of the stock market growth, 85%, 80 to 85% was contributed by one group. I mean, you don't have to be a genius or a commerce graduate. You don't even have to be a matriculate to know that this is farcical. And there is an underlying fraudulent color that needs to be probed forensically. So I think, to cut the long story short, don't waste your time in what the BJP says. They will try and deflect it. They have been batting for him in any case, because remember, Neelu, in protecting Adani, they're basically trying to protect Narendra Modi, India's prime minister.
Absolutely, bang on. And since you are a guy who is clued into finance and the corporate sector, Sanjay, what could be the financial implications as far as this U.S. indictment is concerned on the Indian corporate sector, on the Indian stock market? What kind of a fallout do you see in the coming days now? Because this is a very serious issue. It's a big development, which apparently BJP is just trying to brush it aside and giving wishy-washy answers. But what kind of implication it will have on the corporate and the financial sector?
Well, I can tell you once again, the BJP here, I believe, are damaged extremely humongously in their mission to protect the prime minister. They had to do that in the Rafale case. They're doing it here as well. Be it as that may, the fact of the matter is that this will have an impact on the Adani group for sure. You saw how their stock price crashed today. This is not just what we call as a bear or somebody which is in the business of short selling, putting out a report because somebody accused them of having a motivational element in their research report. This is the SEC. This is the New York Federal Court. This is the Department of Justice. This is like the US government telling the Indian government that you're the richest man in India, or one of the two richest men in India, has committed serious violations of the American law, which, by the way, prohibits you from paying money and indulging in any cash deals to win contracts. There are severe consequences. By the way, let me tell you, Enron, which was one of the biggest electricity majors once upon a time, actually folded up because of the same issues, as did Arthur Andersen because they were the auditors. I can tell you that you can possibly see a similar spin happening here. I'm not going to predict what's going to happen tomorrow. Mr. Modi's government is going to bat for Adani because their life now depends on it. But this is now totally beyond their control. They cannot control this anymore. This will take a legal definition. I do believe that the Americans here will follow this to its logical conclusion. You found that Mr. Adani has raised a lot of money on the backdrop of falsification of records. If the Americans could take Donald Trump to the cleaners, a former president to the cleaners, and by the way, Mr. Trump may get certain immunity, presidential immunity, but even now it's a potential, shall we say, circumstance where he may have to still go to courts. That's the transparency that, like it or not, America has, for all its other flaws. So the truth is, Mr. Adani has not yet seen the last of the courts of law. And I think what Rahul Gandhi said today is pertinent. Does Mr. Modi's government care for India's reputation? Or does it care for its own image, the prime minister's battered and bruised credibility, and an attempt here, or rather in an attempt to try and protect what appears to be a completely tarnished, stigmatized brand of Gautam Adani? We'll see which way Mr. Modi and Mr. Adani go, but Rahul Gandhi has a point. Mr. Modi and Mr. Adani are so deep down in this cesspool of, murky politics that I think they're going to find it hard to extricate themselves. Can I make one point, Neelu, before you ask me the next question? Link this up to what Ajit Pawar said recently in Maharashtra. that
Yes.
Gautam Adani was sitting in meetings with Amit Shah and Devendra Fadnavis to topple the Maha Vikas Aghadi government when when we were looking at forming that in 2019. Not just that, the meetings were being held in the house. You think Mr. Adani doesn't have a whole black diary on the BJP? I don't think the BJP is going to get itself uh, easily, shall we say, extricated from this extremely repugnant mess that they have created for themselves, and there should be consequences for it.
Sanjay, I was looking at your tweet in the morning where you raised some very important questions. The first was, of course, if I can read it out,
Sure.
you had written that so will Modi government allow extradition of Gautam Adani to USA. Now, if push comes to shove and if Gautam Adani is not able to explore all the legal recourse or whatever he's trying, so is extradition of Gautam Adani the last lap in this entire race we are going to see? And will Modi government be forced to extradite him? Will we reach a situation like that?
Well, let me tell you that nothing is impossible given the circumstances in which we live today. I can tell you that the SEC is independent, as is the Department of Justice. Donald Trump, if you remember very interestingly, received a message from Mr. Adani on Twitter. We will make huge investments. You remember that? I was astonished as to how is a man making a call to invest in a country to a president elect when he could have made it to the current president quite a few months ago. Why didn't he do that, right? So clearly these are matters that is not going to escape even American media. And American media, Trump may rubbish CNN or MSNBC or whoever, the New York Times and Washington Post, but Trump ends up watching them every night. Trump ends up reading New York Times every day and dying to feature in it. So here is the truth, that this has caught the attention of the world press. If Mr. Trump believes, and if he's naive enough, I hope in his second and last term he doesn't surprise us all. But unless he behaves like a novice or a tyro and believes that he can bludgeon through it all by using the same authoritarian techniques as some of his other friends have done in different parts of the world, he would be surprised with how the US media could go after him. And it's not so easy to get away with that. Remember, he's an impeached president. It's not, he may become the president, but he's pretty much got one of the a damaged reputation. So I do believe this will have consequences. And for the markets, it'll make it very difficult for Mr. Adani to raise more money. I think you're going to see a lot of his shares and their PE valuations now get corrected. I would like to make a point here that no one here has got a personal grudge against Mr. Adani. He's a businessman. I'm sure every deal of his may not be, a convoluted deal with multiple layers of corruption or bribery. But if any of his deals has got an element of opacity or kickbacks or a gravy train, then Mr. Adani will have to face the legal consequences. The BJP keeps making this absolutely ridiculous charge on the Congress that, you got Adani's investment with Revant Reddy in Telangana, or with Ashok Gehlot in Rajasthan, or with Baghel in Chhattisgarh. But the simple answer is that these are investments made by Mr. Adani as a businessman. And if the BJP believes that their due diligence has not been followed, and there have been kickbacks to, by Mr. Adani to these governments of the Congress to get the deal investigated. And if one of these chief ministers have done a shady deal, imprison them. But you cannot protect Narendra Modi by saying no JPC, no investigation. And you cannot protect Madhavi Puri Butch. And you cannot go on and on, kind of brazening it out that Mr. Adani is the ultimate prototype of an Indian industrialist. I think the bottom line, Neelu, is Indian industry and entrepreneurs, startup, tech, manufacturing, services are brilliant people. India has got great talent. But under Mr. Modi, 2 or 3 or 4 companies, or rather large groups, have literally captured the entire market of government contracts, and they have done what is called as rent seeking. They have captured resources. Look at the number of government contracts that they have. And that is where there is a problem. It's not a problem with business. It's a problem with crony capitalists.
Sanjay, what kind of an embarrassment today it is for Madhvi Puri Butch? What kind of an embarrassment is it for our courts who just brushed aside everything? What kind of an embarrassment is it for the entire country's system today? It shows a kind of a mirror that, where our systems are, where our systems stand at this point of time.
Neelu, let's be blunt here. Under Narendra Modi as the Prime Minister for the last 10 years, India has become, in terms of governance, a banana republic. I mean, it's not a joke when we say washing machine. It's not just political, hyperbole. Look at the joke an ED has become, a CBI income tax. And now you have election commission. And then you have now, of course, Mr. Adani, the business sector. Don't forget the media. And let me ask you here, Mr. Chief Justice Chandrachud, I kind of felt he was a 50-50 case. I wouldn't write him off as a complete disaster as some people have. I wouldn't be so harsh on him. But this is a time when I think Chief Justice Chandrachud will have to ask himself. He had a chance as a Chief Justice to correct what was clearly a daylight fraud being committed on the Hindenburg report. He appointed a committee and the committee went nowhere. They kept extending the time given to SEBI. Eventually, nothing happened. And Mr. Modi went to the elections. He didn't even seem to be affected by the Adani investigation. Can you imagine that? So I think the truth here is this, that India's governance, India's institutions have failed us completely. They have failed you and me. They have failed everyone who's watching this program. And Neelu, as somebody who's been part of the corporate sector as well as in politics for a long time, I feel sorry for India's young today. The young guys who are studying in colleges, who are MBAs, who are starting their startups or who are working their careers in companies. They will wonder, what kind of a country are we? Where those who have access to big politicians or those who have resources to buy favors can get bigger and bigger and be unchecked without any consequences. No penalties, no punishment. And at the same time, you have a situation where a person who probably steals the bread, I remember the movie Diwar, where a young boy steals a bread because his father is hungry and he gets shot in the leg and probably goes to jail. I mean, that story hasn't changed in India. And how sad, what a monumental tragedy that is.
Well, last question to you, Sanjay, is that since it's a wake-up moment for everyone, the way the institutions have collapsed in our country, it's a clear mirror to whatever has been happening and how Adani has, along with the government, has tried to misuse every institution he could. Now, the way the indictment process will now proceed, we don't know what's going to be the logical conclusion, but the kind of impact it's going to have on the corporate sector, on the financial market. Do you think that it's the end of Adani empire?
I do think that Mr. Adani's reputation is now tarnished beyond redemption. Some people will say that I'm being foolhardy because everybody has a legitimate right to a comeback. But can Mr. Adani ever get rid of this millstone around his neck? I don't think so. This has been going on for far too long. And the buyout of the Mumbai airport from the GVK to Adani's, I thought had a criminal conspiracy written behind it. Many of the acquisitions that he's made will need to be investigated. I think there will be a change in government at some point, right? Mr. Modi is not going to be in power forever. The BJP is going to lose sooner rather than later. There will be a change of government. This is all in the public domain. And let me tell you, no matter how hard you try, there will be trails, both financial as well as audit, that will catch up with Mr. Adani. Mr. Adani probably, he used the Hindenburg to get sympathy for himself because the BJP became his legal counsel. Because BJP spokespeople and leaders batted for him as if India was equal to Adani, which is like a tragic mess, if you ask me. Can you imagine a ruling party mandated to form the government became a cheerleader and a handmaiden of Gautam
But
Adani.
even today, all the BJP spokespersons who are batting for Gautam Adani, they're innocent till proven guilty. But one quick question before I wind up the show. He had contracts with so many countries: Australia, Kenya, Bangladesh. Australia. Now, Kenyan government has cancelled apparently all the contracts. Bangladesh High Court, day before yesterday, we had done a huge discussion on how, they are going to investigate this whole thing. And they find some serious irregularities over there as well, as far as the power deal was concerned. Do you think that Adani will be now having the face to invest in other countries the way he has been going around previously?
I think not just a red flag, he ought to be blacklisted by most governments. I don't think anybody will want to touch him with a barge pole. And Narendra Modi is the prime minister of this country, not the BJP. Mr. Modi needs to explain to the parliament and to the people of India in parliament, how is it that Narendra Modi's foreign trips, when he was accompanied by Gautam Adani, got him contracts in Australia, in Sri Lanka, in Israel, don't forget, in Kenya, and Bangladesh. And you know what happened in Kenya? A massive protest. Bangladesh is reviewing it anyways. Sri Lanka, they actually said on the floor of parliament that we were pressured by India's prime minister. And the guy who made the disclosure.
What is Switzerland? Swiss records.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a whole laundry list. So Narendra Modi has done what he's wanted to do. If you ask me, everyone, keeps kind of protecting him because from the BJP, because they have no other choice. The others are too scared to call him out because they believe he will raid them by an ED or a CBI. But Neelu, let me tell you, the people of India are enlightened. I don't care for what the BJP does. India does not deserve the BJP. And I think India does not deserve a businessman in the name of Adani as its kind of poster boy, because there are honest people in our country. There are hardworking people in this country.
Absolutely.
There are people who have worked from nowhere and done well. There are middle-class talent. There are people who have worked their way, through IIMs and IITs, or who have just created their own dreams, whether they had formal or informal education. And I think we need to applaud that. What we are witnessing today is a shame. And I do hope that politically the BJP pays a price for it, because you should not be allowed to get away with this. Mr. Adani has got public listed companies. The markets are the ultimate leveler.
But Sanjay, if you look at the BJP press conference which has happened today, Sambit Patra was conducting the press conference, and there in that press conference they've said that attack on Adani is attack on the Indian share market. It's an attack basically on India. It's almost like a repeat of what we saw during the Hindenburg report. What would you really say, very briefly, and then we end the program? Yes.
Neelu, I think the BJP, in my opinion, is a shame on this country. There are people who, as you know, have divided this country. The Prime Minister talks about "Ek hai to safe hai," as if we are not one and not safe. Can you imagine what a terrible, pathetic low it is for a CEO of a country to do after being in power for 10 years, for heaven's sake? And then you have "Batenge to katenge." So these guys have now stooped low to conquer. And the BJP is literally kind of, as they say, scrapping the bottom of the barrel. And they are capable of going to miserable, abject, abysmal depths to cling onto power. Let Sambit Patra and do whatever they want to say. I don't think they talk balderdash. And whenever they have no answer, Neelu, bring up nationalism. This is the same party whose ideological mentors were on the side of the British, whose great Nathuram Godse assassinated Mahatma Gandhi. And they are the ones who are talking about nationalism. As I say, life is strange, but life also catches up. I think for Mr. Modi and the BJP, probably the bells are beginning to toll.
Thank you so much, Sanjay, for a wonderful interview. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stay ahead with our cutting-edge news app. Instantly access the latest shorts in just 1 minute and breaking news in just 50 words. Download now for a smarter, faster news experience.